Welcome to our deep dive, all about FNN. You know that company behind drinks like 100 PLUS? You requested this one and sent over their 2023 annual report. So we're going to really break down their business model, how they make money, and where they see themselves growing in the future.
It's fascinating. They've actually been around since 1883. That's over 140 years of business.
That's right, 140 years. And we've got their SWOT analysis too, so
Yeah.
we'll touch on their strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. What's the first thing that jumps out at you when you look at FNN's business model?
Well, they might be known for their beverages, but it's actually a much more diverse company than many people realize. They actually have two main divisions, food and beverage, or F&B as it's often called. And then there's their publishing and printing arm, sometimes shortened to P&P.
Hold on. FNN is in the publishing business. That's not what I expected. So their F&B division is drinks and food?
Mhm.
What kinds of things does their P&P division do?
It's pretty broad. They're involved in publishing, not printing, retail, and distribution of both educational and general interest materials.
So they're covering a lot of ground. Okay, back to the drinks and food side of things. What are some of the brands under their F&B umbrella?
Well, I'm sure you're familiar with some of their big names, like Honored PS, FNN Nutrisoy, FNN Magnolia, and FNN Seasons.
Oh, absolutely. Those are pretty common here.
But what you might not know is that they're also licensed to use brands like Carnation, Bear Brand, Sunkist, Oyoshi, and Chang.
That's a lot more than I would have guessed. It sounds like they've got a finger in a lot of pies, so to speak. Where geographically is FNN most active? I know they're big in Southeast Asia. But what does that actually look like in terms of their revenue?
You're right, they're a major player in Southeast Asia, and their 2023 revenue breakdown really highlights that. Singapore makes up about 22% of their revenue. Malaysia comes in at a significant 49%. Thailand follows with 19%, and then the remaining 10% comes from other markets.
So almost half of their revenue comes from Malaysia alone. That's a pretty big chunk. Does that surprise you at all?
Not really. Malaysia is a key market for them, particularly when it comes to their dairy products. They've invested heavily in manufacturing and distribution there, and it seems to be paying off.
That makes sense. Okay, let's dive into how FNN actually makes money. What kind of revenue are we talking about here?
Well, in 2023, they brought in a total of $2,099 million. That's a 5% increase from the previous year, which is quite impressive given some of the economic headwinds they face.
Yeah, that's no small feat. So where does all that money come from? Which of their business segments is bringing in the big bucks?
Their revenue in 2023 breaks down like this: 29% from beverages, a whopping 57% from dairies, 10% from publishing and printing, and the remaining 4% falls under the other category.
Wow, so dairies are their real cash cows, so to speak.
Yeah.
I'm actually curious, did their annual report mention anything about what's driving that success in the dairy segment?
It did. Their report highlighted that dairies contributed a remarkable 86% of their total earnings in 2023. Brands like Gold Coin, Teapot, and of course Carnation are some of the big names driving that impressive performance. It looks like they've really carved out a strong position for themselves in the Southeast Asian dairy market.
That's amazing. Almost 90% of earnings from just one segment. It makes you wonder, what are they doing to make sure the growth continues, not just in dairies, but across all of their operations?
Their annual report actually outlines some interesting growth strategies for the future. They're really focused on four key areas: creating a sustainable supply chain, optimizing their infrastructure, driving innovation, and strategic expansion.
Okay, let's unpack those a bit. What does sustainable supply chain mean in this context?
It's about more than just sourcing ingredients responsibly, though that's definitely part of it. They're talking about streamlining their operations, investing in sustainable practices, and enhancing their agility to respond to changes in the market.
So it's about being both efficient and responsible. What about infrastructure optimization? That sounds pretty technical.
It is, but think of it this way. They're making sure their manufacturing, distribution, and all the behind-the-scenes stuff runs as smoothly as possible. This helps them meet consumer demand quickly and efficiently, while also controlling costs.
They're like making sure the engine is running at peak performance. What about the innovation side of things? What kind of innovations are they pursuing?
It's broader than just new products,
Oh,
though they're certainly doing that too. They're embracing innovation across their entire business, from internal processes and digitalization to sustainable practices. They're really trying to integrate innovation into every aspect of their operations.
That's really interesting. So it's not just about what they're producing, but how they're producing it, and even how they're managing their business as a whole. Any specific examples of how that plays out?
Absolutely. Their report highlighted a few things. First, they've installed a large-scale solar energy system on the rooftops of their plants in Malaysia. This is actually one of the largest rooftop solar installations in the country. They're also expanding their brewing capabilities in Myanmar, which is a strategic move to tap into the growing beer market in Southeast Asia.
So they're making bold moves, both in terms of sustainability and expansion. What about new products?
They've got some interesting initiatives there too. For example, they launched the 100 PLUS hydration bar in Singapore, which targets consumers looking for healthier snack options. And they introduced FNN Magniva sterilized milk in Indonesia, tapping into the growing demand for ready-to-drink milk.
It sounds like they're really paying attention to consumer trends
Yeah.
and trying to anticipate what people will want next. Okay, last but not least, they mentioned strategic expansion. What does that look like for FNN?
They're actively pursuing acquisitions that can add value and enhance their capabilities. They're not just looking to grow organically, they're looking to partner with or acquire companies that can bring something new to the table.
That makes sense. It's like adding new tools to their toolbox. Now that we've gotten a good sense of their business model, geographic reach,
Yeah.
and growth strategies. Let's move on to the SWOT analysis you mentioned earlier. Can you remind us what a SWOT analysis is and why it's important?
Of course. SWOT stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. It's a framework used to evaluate a company's current position and potential for future success.
Right, it's like a holistic view of where they stand. So starting with their strengths, what are some of FNN's key advantages?
They've got a strong brand portfolio with a lot of history behind it, and those brands are well recognized across Southeast Asia. They've also built a strong distribution network, have a history of robust financial performance, and have shown a real commitment to sustainability and innovation, which are becoming increasingly important to consumers.
Those are definitely some valuable assets. But no company is perfect, right? What are some of the weaknesses FNN needs to be aware of?
Like many companies that do a lot of business in emerging markets, they're vulnerable to things like fluctuating exchange rates and rising input costs.
I can see how that would be a challenge. Anything else?
Well, they're also pretty reliant on certain key markets, so any economic slowdowns in those regions could have a significant impact on their bottom line.
So diversification is probably something they're thinking about. Now let's talk about opportunities. Where do you see the potential for FNN to grow and expand?
There's certainly room for them to expand into new markets, both geographically and in terms of product categories.
Interesting. How could they go about doing that?
They could look at acquiring companies in new regions or develop new product lines that cater to different consumer needs. For example, there's a growing demand for healthier food and beverage options, so they could focus on developing products that meet those needs.
It sounds like there's a lot of opportunity for them to innovate and tap into new markets. What about threats? What are some of the challenges FNN might face in the coming years?
Well, the F&B industry is incredibly competitive, both from local and international players. They're also going to have to keep a close eye on shifting consumer preferences. We talked about healthier options, but there's also growing concern about sustainability, so they'll need to stay ahead of those trends if they want to stay competitive.
It's like they're juggling a lot of balls in the air at once. Innovation, sustainability, competition, changing tastes. It's a lot to keep track of.
And we can't forget about the potential for regulatory changes. Governments could introduce new policies or regulations that impact their operations or increase their costs, so they need to be adaptable and proactive.
It sounds like staying informed and being able to adapt quickly is crucial in an industry like this.
Yeah.
So taking all of this into account, the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities,
Yeah.
and threats. What's your overall take on FNN's future?
I think they're in a good position. They've got a strong foundation, a clear vision for growth, and they're taking steps to address their weaknesses and capitalize on opportunities.
They've also proven they can adapt and evolve. I mean, 140 years in business is no small feat. I'm curious, though. Remember how their report mentioned they were actively looking at acquisitions?
Yes, I remember.
What kind of companies do you think would be a good fit for FNN? What could they bring to the table that would help FNN achieve their growth goals?
That's a great question. They could target a company with a strong presence in a new market, maybe somewhere in Africa or South America, where they don't have as much of a foothold. Or maybe a company with a unique product line that complements their existing portfolio, like a specialized health food company or a premium beverage brand.
Or maybe even a tech company, something with expertise in e-commerce or digital marketing that could help them reach consumers in new ways. It'll be interesting to see what direction they go in.
Definitely. Their next move could really shape the future of the company.
Well, this has been a fascinating deep dive into FNN. We covered a lot of ground, from their diverse business model and geographic reach to their impressive financial performance and ambitious growth strategies.
We explored their commitment to sustainability and innovation, analyzed their strengths and weaknesses, and even pondered the potential for future acquisitions.
It's amazing to see how a company with such a long history is still finding ways to innovate and stay ahead of the curve. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us. We always love getting to explore these companies and industries with you.
It's a pleasure to be here.
And for you listening. If you're as intrigued by FNN as we are, we encourage you to check out their website or their sustainability report for a closer look at their operations. There's always more to learn.
Until next time.